Request now Professor Shanti Vijayaraghavan to start her lecture on acute pancreatitis management.
Thank you very much, Chairpersons. My thanks to the Salem chapter, Tamil Nadu, for inviting me here today. And we are going to concentrate mainly on the acute management of pancreatitis because it's a very vast topic. There has been a lot of guidelines on acute pancreatitis. More than 30 guidelines are available. As much as the number of the guidelines, there is also an increasing level of controversies regarding the management of acute pancreatitis. Now, what really happens in ground reality? Usually, severity assessments are not performed regularly, fluids are not replaced adequately, the nutritional support is inadequate, CT is frequently done too soon, and for suspected pancreatic necrosis, FNA is not done, and the antibiotics are often used inappropriately. So the initial assessment of severity is very important because this helps to stratify the patient, and most of the societies recommend the Apache 2 score, which is widely validated in several thousands of patients, but is very complex and it's very difficult to use it in day-to-day practice. So we've got the simplified bedside score or the BISAP score, which has been tried out in a number of patients, and what is this has 5 parameters. The first one is the serum blood urea nitrogen, the mental status of the patient, SIRS, the age of the patient, and pleural effusion. So each of these are given a point of 1, and a score of more than 3 means an increased mortality rate during the hospital admission for the patient. So 2 of these parameters, especially the blood urea nitrogen and the SIRS, have captured interest recently. If the blood urea nitrogen is going to be elevated at admission, or if there is going to be an increase during admission of more than 5 on a single day, it's going to carry a very increased risk of mortality of more than 20% for the patient. The SIRS is also a very easy score to do. It means capturing just the temperature, heart rate, respiratory rate, and the blood counts, and this can be done at the bedside day to day for the patient. A score of more than 2 means the patient has got SIRS. So what are the implications for a patient with SIRS? If the patient is going to have a systemic inflammatory response persisting for more than 48 hours, it means the patient has got a significant risk of organ failure, necrosis, an increased hospital stay, and also an increased mortality. So it's not only the organ failure, per se the organ failure, it's mainly the dynamics of the organ failure. That is, if the patient is going to have persistent organ failure for more than 48 hours, as in contradiction to transient organ failure, which usually recovers in less than 48 hours, the patient is going to have a mortality rate of 20 to 40%. So keeping this in mind, the recent classifications have also included the local complications, that is the infectious or peripancreatic complications, along with persistent organ failure in stratifying the patient. And now there's a new classification which says a critical classification to include the infectious and the persistent organ failure. Now, how do you start with the 0-hour management? Because these patients have got a significant vascular leak, which means hypotension, a decrease in the pancreatic microcirculation, which can exacerbate and cause increase in the infectious complications. Fluids form the cornerstone of management. When you say fluids, there are many parameters: the rate, the volume, what type of fluids, how are you going to improve outcome, and how are you going to guide your treatment. So most of the societies are not very clear on what type. All of them call for aggressive fluid resuscitation, and to start off with a fluid bolus initially, and then to maintain a urine output of 0.5 ml per kg per hour. So how aggressive is aggressive? So you're going to administer, in studies which have used 1/3 of the fluid volume of 72 hours requirement in 24 hours, they found a lesser organ failure rate compared with the non-aggressive group. So timing more important than the total requirement. Early resuscitation was found to be in several studies causing decreased SIRS of the inflammatory rates and decreased rate of intensive care admissions and a shorter length of stay. But more is always not better, because there is a study from China which said these patients who had a rapid hemodilution had a higher sepsis and mortality rates than the slower hemodilution rate. So all is not well with the aggressive group. The influence of fluid therapy was found to have a higher rate of respiratory insufficiency and renal failure when it's going to be too aggressive. If it's going to be more than 4 liters of fluid administration during the initial 24 hours. And what type of fluids? Crystalloids are generally preferred. There's a recommendation from most societies. Colloids may be considered when the patient has got a low hematocrit, a Paxil transfusion, or the serum albumin is less than 2, albumin transfusion. Is the type of fluid also important? Many studies have shown that lactatus Ringer's solution reduces the inflammatory rates and hence the infectious complications also than the patient receiving saline, except for patients with hypercalcemia, because this contains 3 milliequivalents per liter of calcium. So not one particular thing fits everyone. You have to recognize that it's not definitely a linear relationship, the administration of fluids, but it's rather a dynamic relationship. That is, patients with local complications or SIRS may have an increased fluid requirement. It's a situation analogous to the septic workup, where you're going to give initially a fluid bolus, see if the patient is going to be responsive to the fluids, and then with hemodynamic monitoring, you're going to administer more fluids. So we move on to the next controversy, what imaging in the early phase. The early phase, the only modality of choice is going to be an ultrasound to rule out gallstones. CT is indicated if there is going to be a persistent inflammatory response or clinical deterioration after the first 72 hours, or if the diagnosis is doubt, you're going to consider an alternative diagnosis. This is because of the lack of sensitivity of early imaging to detect necrosis, and infected necrosis is unlikely within the first week. The next contentious issue is usage of antibiotics. Usage of antibiotics is in 2 settings, the therapeutic and prophylactic. Therapeutic is, of course, a rational choice of antibiotics. Prophylactic is going to be a very contentious issue. So most of the studies have shown that there is no difference in infectious complications and the hospitalization rates and surgery when prophylactic antibiotics are used. But what does the Cochrane review, the last one, say? Although we cannot confirm benefit from the use of prophylactic antibiotics, there have been some trends towards beneficial effect in some. So coming to the next, if you decide antibiotic, what next? What is the antibiotic you're going to use? We can see from the early phase from the first week, from a gram-negative due to bacterial translocation, as the patient's disease progresses, there's going to be an increase towards resistant gram-positive organisms. This is a study from India, from Katha Singh and group. So selective digestive decontamination may help some of these patients. But the strength of the evidence is finally at the moment insufficient to incorporate this into regular practice. So what's the use of probiotics? There's a higher instance of bowel ischemia and greater morbidity due to some unknown mechanisms. So probiotics are at the moment not advocated in a patient with acute pancreatitis. This is again a study from India, from Katha Singh and group. They showed fungal infections in a significant number of patients, in up to 36% of their patients, and they found that hypertension on admission and understandably antibiotic usage for more than 4 weeks, the administration of TPN or any invasive devices to be a significant risk factor for fungal infection. It's also very difficult sometimes to diagnose fungal infections because Candida is rapidly cleared from the blood, and it's going to be a very slow growth. So PCR could be used to rapidly and sensitively diagnose fungal infection. And the most effective antifungal appears to be amphotericin B. But however, routine use of antifungals is not recommended at this moment because of the possibility of resistant organisms. So